The flickering torches, the mournful cries, the scent of incense mingling with grief. This is how we picture a Roman funeral, isn't it? A solemn, dignified ceremony, a final farewell to a loved one journeying to the underworld. But what if I told you that's just one side of the story? A carefully constructed facade designed to conceal an underworld of disturbing rituals, macabre businesses, and secrets Rome preferred to bury deep with its dead. If you're ready to unearth the brutal truth about death in ancient Rome, brace yourself. And before I start pulling the shroud, hit that subscribe button. Not just to make sure you don't miss our next dive into history, but because, let's be honest, you don't want a Roman ghost haunting you tonight, do you? The grand spectacle of Roman life would end, but for many, the real show only began once the body grew cold. Because Rome, glorious Rome, that built aqueducts and conquered the world, turned even death into an opportunity for business, for power, for magic, and yes, sometimes for something even more sinister. Just imagine the body is still warm, the morning has barely begun, but people are already calculating the value of that corpse. Yes, its value. Rome didn't look upon death with pity, but with brutal pragmatism. A body was an inconvenience, but also a potential source of income. And this is where a figure few know, but who was essential to the Roman death scene, enters the libitinarii. They weren't mere gravediggers. They were the entrepreneurs of death. From the moment of demise, they took control. Their work didn't end with the sale of a tomb or the funeral procession. In fact, the most bizarre part of their job only truly began once the official period of mourning concluded. They were the masters of decomposition. They determined what would happen to every part of the body, based not on compassion, but on efficiency and profit. If the body was whole, it was worth more. If it was mutilated, it was discarded. And if you think that's already cruel, wait until you see what came next, because we're about to expose how the Romans started selling bodies piece by piece and who on earth was buying them. Hold on tight. Once the libitinarii gave the order, the real business began. Because yes, in Rome, death was sold in pieces, as if the deceased were some kind of dismantled chariot. And there were buyers, many of them, some with practical motives, others with murky rituals, and many with an insatiable thirst for beliefs and superstitions. Think of a liver damaged by disease or a lung with some anomaly. Perfect for doctors who wanted to study human anatomy in an era where dissection was often limited. The eyes, the tongue, even the intestines, everything had a purpose, a buyer. But the most bizarre was what they did with blood. Fresh blood. That was liquid gold for the superstitious. Many Romans believed that drinking the blood of recently deceased individuals cured epilepsy and other ailments. Yes, the blood from the corpse, drained and collected, was sold as if it were a luxury elixir, by the pound often, in secret of course, because not everything was legal, but everything was profitable. Some even paid the libitinarii to let them soak cloths in freshly spilled blood, as if they were sacred relics. But the madness didn't stop there. If the deceased had been an important figure, a senator, a general, a renowned artist, then their body was worth double, not out of respect, but out of morbid fascination. Some nobles would buy their bones to keep as amulets, as if carrying a piece of a powerful dead figure would transfer some of their strength, their power, or their luck. But that wasn't the most grotesque thing. It was what they did with their skin. If the Roman was famous enough, powerful enough, legendary enough, their body wasn't just dismembered, it was transformed into a trophy. And the skin, yes, the skin was the most prized. In Rome's underworld, a rumor circulated. Wearing a piece of tanned hide from a great man conferred invulnerability or wisdom. Absurd? Yes, but they paid for it. Some aristocrats would turn it into covers for their spell scrolls, straps for their swords, or even amulets, as if this would protect them from enemy steel or political treachery. Don't think this was just a matter for the superstitious. Some senators even collected human remains as if they were hunting trophies, a testament to their status and access to dark secrets. The corpse of a Roman wasn't a tragedy, it was a business opportunity, a chance for prestige, and surprisingly, for magic. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst came when the body was no longer useful for anything, no blood, no bones, no skin. When only the remnants remained, that's when the most inhuman side of it all truly began. You see, Rome disposed of the common dead like trash, and even that had its own dark ritual, because Rome, even when it threw out corpses, did so with style, macabre, but style nonetheless. When the body had no more value, no more blood, skin, or useful bones, it was time for its final destination. But don't imagine processions, tears, or epitaphs. None of that. The dead who weren't worth a single coin were simply cast aside as waste. On the outskirts of Rome, there were common graves called puticuli, enormous pits where nameless bodies were thrown, without rites, without tombs. There fell the bodies of criminals, slaves, and also poor, forgotten Romans. Many of them ended up devoured by stray dogs or scavenging birds before even touching the earth. The most disturbing thing is that these pits were so full of bodies that the stench permeated the air for weeks. Sometimes the workers themselves would faint from the gases rising from the pit. And yet no one spoke of it in the forum, nor in the Senate, nor in the baths. Because the death of a common Roman, to many, wasn't a tragedy. It was routine, flesh that no longer yielded profit. And still, some bodies simply disappeared. They weren't thrown into pits, nor sold, nor given away. They just vanished. Who stole them? Why? We're about to uncover just that, because even common Romans didn't always rest in peace. Some returned to life, even after death. And it's not a metaphor. It might sound like a legend, but it isn't. Because in Rome, some dead individuals returned to their homes, not as ghosts, but as grotesque figures, transformed into puppets of the glory they once had, or perhaps of their disgrace. How, you ask? With wax effigies, life-sized replicas made over actual bodies. Yes, you read that right. Sometimes, the body of the deceased was crudely embalmed, filled with straw or clay, painted and dressed in their favorite clothes. Then it would be displayed in public processions to recall their importance, or simply to entertain the populace with the morbid spectacle. But that wasn't all. On some occasions, these bodies were used for dark rituals. Some cults believed that the soul of an important person shouldn't fully depart, that it could continue to protect the city or a family if their likeness was preserved. Thus, they kept the bodies in hidden temples, surrounded by incense, inscriptions, and ritual knives. And if that seems extreme, imagine this. There are records of private spectacles in Roman villas, where parts of bodies were used as banquet decorations, as if they were hunting trophies hung on the wall. Death was not an end. It was another use, an extension of entertainment, of the display of power. But what if the Roman had been loved by the people? What if someone wanted to avenge them or give them a proper burial? That's where a different story begins. A story of escapes, stolen bodies, and secret funerals, because not everyone was willing to let their loved ones be treated like trash. In the shadows of Rome, far from the bustle and official pomp, some Romans were lucky enough or strong enough to receive something akin to a dignified funeral. Family members, loyal slaves, or even passionate friends risked everything to steal the bodies of their loved ones. These thefts were no simple matter. The libitinarii and guards watched over the pits and depots, and the consequences for being discovered were severe, but devotion outweighed fear. Thus, under the moonlight, clandestine funerals were organized with candles and whispers, where the deceased received a secret burial in a hidden place. In some cases, these rites mingled with ancient pagan traditions, invoking the protection of minor gods so that the spirit of the deceased would not suffer in the afterlife. It was an act of silent rebellion against the empire's brutal indifference. But not all bodies were recovered. Many remained in pits, others were used for grotesque spectacles. Rome was a place of extremes, and the death of a Roman could be as honorable or as vile as the destiny that befell them. But what about the ultimate control? What about the missing bones, and how Rome manipulated even the last remains to control the memory of its citizens? Are you ready for the next level of this brutal truth? The bones of Romans were far more than mere skeletal remains in Rome. They held a symbolic and practical value that few imagine. Some bones were recovered by families or followers to make relics, amulets, or even objects of power. However, others vanished without a trace. The reason was obscure and calculated. The empire wanted to control the memory of its citizens because a dead person, especially an influential one, could be a symbol, an inspiration for rebellion, or an uncomfortable reminder. If their tomb or bones were allowed to become a place of pilgrimage, dangerous myths could arise that would question Rome's authority. For this reason, those in power ordered some bones to mysteriously disappear. They were sent to secret workshops where they were crushed, melted into urns, or used in rituals that blended religion and social control. It was a way to erase not only the person, but also their history, their influence. Thus, Rome maintained its narrative. The Roman was merely a piece on the empire's chessboard, a subject, a sacrifice, nothing more. But not everyone accepted that fate. We're about to reveal the final truth. What happened to the bodies of the most famous Romans, and how did their legacy survive the empire? Because the truth, however cruel, always finds its way. Despite all the brutality, the macabre trade, and the attempts to erase their bodies and their bones, some Romans managed to transcend death. Their names, their deeds, and above all, their spirit remained etched in the collective memory of Rome and beyond. The crowds continued to remember their leaders, their heroes, or even their martyrs, and over time, these accounts transformed into legends. Some Romans, like Cicero the orator or Julius Caesar, even with their violent deaths, and at times the manipulation of their remains, became symbols of resistance, intelligence, or power. Even when their bodies were destroyed or disappeared, their legacy was perpetuated in mosaics, paintings, coins, and oral accounts that traveled throughout the empire and crossed centuries. And today, thousands of years later, we remain fascinated by these figures who lived, died, and often had their bodies treated in unthinkable ways. Rome wanted to make them mere sacrifices or objects of control, but it could not erase their history. And now, you also make part of this history, because knowing the truth is an act of remembrance, respect, and why not, justice for those who fought until their last breath to have their own narrative. This isn't just about ancient Rome. It's about the enduring power of humanity to defy oblivion. The lengths Rome went to control its narrative, even over the dead, show us how powerful a simple memory can be. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit that despite all the machinery of empire, the personal, the emotional, the human connection always found a way to persist. But let's delve deeper into the Roman understanding of the body, even after the spirit had fled. The fascination with the physical remains was not solely driven by macabre curiosity or profit. It was rooted in a complex tapestry of religious beliefs, philosophical ideas, and even medical practices. While we've touched upon the dark commerce of body parts, it's crucial to understand the context. Roman medicine, though advanced for its time, relied heavily on observation. The study of anatomy was often limited, and opportunities to examine internal organs were rare. This scarcity made the bodies of the dead, particularly those without family claims, an invaluable, albeit illicit, resource for physicians and scholars. They sought not just cures, but understanding, trying to decipher the mysteries of the human form, organ function, and disease progression. Imagine a renowned Roman physician, driven by an insatiable quest for knowledge, clandestinely acquiring a liver or a brain from the libitinarii. These were not mere ghoulish acts, but desperate attempts to push the boundaries of medical science in an era lacking modern facilities and ethical guidelines. These clandestine anatomical studies, often conducted in secret, far from public scrutiny, contributed to the slow, painful accumulation of medical knowledge that would eventually benefit future generations. So, while the sale of organs might seem barbaric to us today, for some it was a necessary evil, a grim contribution to the nascent field of medicine. Beyond the realm of science, the body, or parts of it, held profound supernatural significance. The Romans, despite their sophisticated engineering and legal systems, were deeply superstitious. They believed that the essence of a person, their spirit, could linger in their physical remains, imparting power or protection. This belief fueled the demand for amulets and talismans made from human bones, teeth, or even hair. Soldiers might carry a piece of a renowned warrior's bone for luck in battle, or a mother might keep a lock of a revered ancestor's hair, believing it would ward off illness from her children. These were not isolated eccentricities. They were widespread practices woven into the fabric of daily life. The market for such macabre charms was surprisingly robust, feeding a network of underground artisans and merchants who specialized in processing human remains for ritualistic purposes. The very thought of handling human remains in such a manner sends shivers down our spines today. But to the Romans, it was a tangible connection to the spiritual world, a way to harness the residual energy of the departed for their own benefit. This blurred the lines between reverence and exploitation, transforming the deceased from a person into a potent magical resource. And then there was the psychological warfare aspect of controlling the dead. We briefly touched upon damnatio memoriae, the official condemnation of memory, where a person's existence was erased from public record. But this went deeper than simply chiseling names off monuments. It extended to the physical body. For individuals deemed enemies of the state, or those who posed a political threat even after death, their bodies would undergo processes designed to ensure not only their physical disappearance, but also the complete obliteration of their memory and influence. This could involve not just the secret disposal of their remains, but also the deliberate act of cremation in a manner that left no identifiable ashes, or the scattering of their dust in remote, unknown locations. The goal was to prevent any potential cult of personality from forming around them, to deny their followers a focal point for remembrance, and thereby to undermine any lingering political power they might possess. It was a chilling testament to Rome's understanding that even in death, a powerful individual could pose a threat to the established order. This wasn't just about disrespect. It was about absolute control over narrative and public sentiment. Think of the psychological impact on a populace forbidden to mourn or even acknowledge the death of certain figures. It fostered an atmosphere of fear and unquestioning obedience, reinforcing the absolute power of the state. These weren't just isolated incidents. They were calculated strategies employed to maintain social order and political stability, demonstrating the Roman Empire's mastery not just of military conquest, but of the human psyche itself. The silence surrounding these disappearances spoke volumes, a stark warning to any who might consider defying Rome. But what about those who resisted this brutal control? The families and friends who, despite the severe risks, sought to defy the state and provide a dignified farewell. These acts of clandestine burial were profoundly dangerous. The penalties for interfering with official disposal or for conducting unsanctioned rites were severe, often involving torture, imprisonment, or even death. Yet the deep human need for mourning, for closure, for honoring loved ones, often outweighed the fear of reprisal. Imagine a small group gathering under the cloak of night, whispering prayers, digging a shallow grave in a secluded spot, or perhaps even attempting to transport the body far from the city. These were acts of immense bravery and profound loyalty, a testament to the enduring human spirit in the face of an oppressive system. These secret burials, far from the grand public ceremonies, offered a form of quiet defiance, a way to reclaim agency and dignity in death when life had offered so little. These hidden graves, often unmarked or subtly disguised, represent a counter-narrative to the official Roman version of death. They are a poignant reminder that even in an empire obsessed with control, the bonds of love and loyalty could not be entirely extinguished. And sometimes, these secret rites mingled with older traditions, a desperate attempt to ensure peace for the departed soul far from the cold, calculating eyes of Rome. It's a stark contrast to the grand mausoleums of the wealthy, a silent cry of humanity against the machinery of empire. However, it's also important to acknowledge that for the vast majority of Rome's population, the working class, the impoverished, the countless slaves, there was no hope of such a dignified, clandestine farewell. Their bodies simply melted into the earth of the puticuli, anonymous and forgotten, their lives and deaths barely acknowledged, let alone remembered. This grim reality underscores the harsh social stratification of Roman society, where even in death, one's status dictated their fate. The puticuli were not merely disposal sites, they were a stark symbol of Rome's indifference to the lives and deaths of its less fortunate. The stench of these pits, as we noted, was a constant, undeniable presence in certain parts of the city. Yet, it was a smell that the elites chose to ignore, a testament to the human capacity for selective blindness when confronted with uncomfortable truth. The very air they breathed, tainted by the forgotten dead, served as a grim reminder of the vast human cost of their imperial grandeur, a silent accusation against the polished marble and grand pronouncements of the Forum. But even the deepest pits and the most complete obliterations could not erase every trace. As we've seen, the human need for memory, for legacy, is a powerful force. While Rome sought to control the narrative of death, life found a way to resist. The oral traditions, the whispered stories, the hidden symbols, these were the vessels through which the true legacy of many Romans, both famous and obscure, was carried forward, circumventing the official decrees and the orchestrated forgetfulness. This enduring human impulse to remember, to honor, to tell stories, proved to be more resilient than any imperial edict or secret workshop. It's a powerful reminder that history is not just what is written by the powerful, but what is remembered by the people. The very fact that we are discussing these hidden truths today, thousands of years later, is a testament to the resilience of human memory and the enduring fascination with the untold stories. Rome, in its attempt to control every aspect of life and death, ironically ensured that these dark secrets would one day be brought to light. The brutal efficiency of its system, designed to erase, only served to make the hidden stories more compelling when finally unearthed. And now you too are a part of unearthing this history. So, what does this tell us about Rome? It reveals an empire built on both immense power and profound contradictions. A society that celebrated life and conquest with unparalleled spectacle, yet treated death with a chilling pragmatism that often veered into the macabre. It shows us a world where the lines between the sacred and the profane, the scientific and the superstitious, the respectful and the exploitative, were constantly blurred. The Roman Empire was not just legions and emperors. It was also the libitinarii, the secret rituals, the stench of the puticuli, and the desperate acts of love in the face of overwhelming power. This hidden history of Roman death challenges our idealized notions and forces us to confront the grittier realities of the past. It reminds us that every grand civilization has its shadows, its uncomfortable truths that lie beneath the surface of official narratives. And it underscores the enduring power of humanity to find meaning, to mourn, and to remember. even when faced with the most ruthless attempts to erase. The human story, in all its brutal complexity, always finds a way to be told. If this journey into the hidden truths of Roman death has left you wanting more, if you're hungry for the untold stories that mainstream history often ignores, then your next step is clear. Subscribe to this channel now. Join our community of history explorers, where we peel back the layers of time to reveal the wild, brutal, and absolutely real truths of the past. Don't just watch history, unearth it with us. You won't regret it. And remember, here history never dies, it just gets more intense. See you on the next expedition into the past.